Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today, I apologize in advance if there's any background noise during this video. My roommates are out and about, or maybe the dogs. Sometimes they can bark when people come to the door or they think someone's outside. So if you hear any background noise, sorry about that in advance. Today is going to be a character analysis on the requested character of Bilbo Baggins. It took me a little bit while to get to our next character analysis since things have been a little wonky with filming and everything like that, and I apologize, but we are back with some character analysis to do today. Bilbo, I think, is a very interesting character as I was shifting through, and hopefully I will do him justice today. But as I was sifting through the information that I wanted to cover for his analysis, I thought it was an interesting character that we have, and the fact that there's multiple stages to talk about for Bilbo. We have The Hobbit and we have The Lord of the Rings. And obviously, it's two different time periods, and The Hobbit affects who he is in The Lord of the Rings, so there's going to be two different ways of looking at him, who he was in The Hobbit and who he was in The Lord of the Rings. But what I find is even more interesting is we have a character arc, as in most stories they do have changes in characters. The Hobbit really changes Bilbo Baggins, and so we have to also look at his character arc through The Hobbit, and so we get two different views of Bilbo already. We have where he starts out in The Hobbit, where he ends in The Hobbit, and then how he's changed once he's in Lord of the Rings. Obviously, he's not as prominent of a character in Lord of the Rings as he was in The Hobbit, since in The Hobbit he is actually one of the very main characters, but we still see the difference between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So we've got three different stages that Bilbo goes through. The beginning of The Hobbit, to how the Hobbit's adventures affect him, to then where time has led him to be in The Lord of the Rings. So let's go ahead and start with just a basic profile we know at the start of The Hobbit about him. So he is a Hobbit at the age of 50 at the beginning of The Hobbit. And he is from a long line of Bagginses that are distantly related to the Took family. And the Bagginses are known as being very predictable, not adventurous, very respectable hobbits. And Bilbo is, at the beginning, considered one of the line that's of a very respectable Baggins, somebody who is looked up to as a good hobbit and how a hobbit should behave. Bilbo takes great pride in being a Baggins, and initially has no want or need to go on any adventures. So that's basically him at the beginning of The Hobbit, of who he views himself as and how the society views him as. So let's go ahead and talk about traits. Again, we have the beginning of The Hobbit and the end of The Hobbit and how he's kind of changed. So I'm going to talk about the traits that he has at the beginning, and then how we see him change to the traits that he has towards the end of The Hobbit, or what he morphs into. So, at the start of The Hobbit, he's smart, he's honest, very, very honest person. He's a very nice person, maybe too nice for his own good when dealing with dwarves that are pushing him around and wizards that are pushing him around. But he's also a very uptight kind of person, no nonsense, very much a what you would say would be a respectable person in the Hobbit society. He's more meek, not really somebody who's going to take charge and step in and yell or get in people's faces. He's trying to not be pushed around and not be steamrolled over, but he's too meek in order to stop them. He's very unadventurous, never left the Shire, and is very not even interested in what's out there beyond the Shire. And very rigid in his ways. That kind of goes with his uptightness. Very rigid in, this is the way the world is, this is how my life works, and this is how things are going to be. Now, at the end of The Hobbit, he becomes somebody new. He still has some of the same basic concepts of himself. He is honest, he's nice and kind, He's still very smart, but he becomes more resourceful. He starts realizing what he can do to get out of different situations that he is being put in on this adventure. He becomes more outspoken, less meek, more confident, and somebody who can stand up for himself. He's very honorable. He believes in loyalty and camaraderie, there we go, and becomes very adventurous, where he is very happy to finish this adventure. He is no longer wishing to go home and that he had never stepped foot out of the Shire. He is very much wanting to go, possibly willing to go on another adventure at the end. Though, I guess we could question how unlikely, or how he didn't want to go on an adventure, how much he was very against adventuring. Then why would he go on the adventure in the first place? And maybe that has to do with the dwarves and Gandalf pushing him out the door, but technically he does make the decision of his own free will to go on this adventure. They do not force him, they do not kidnap him, they present everything to him, they steamroll him a little bit, and then they let him sit on it, and he does decide to join the adventure. So what that says about him and being unadventurous could be different. It could be that he doesn't really become adventurous. It could just be that he recognizes that he does want to be on adventure and he does like adventuring, that he always wanted to adventure and just never had the guts to do it. What do you guys think about that? Do you think he was actually unadventurous and was just put in a situation where he felt like he had to go? Or do you feel like he always secretly had this want of going on an adventure and just never had the guts to do it, especially with being considered such a proper hobbit and wanting to keep that reputation? I would love to hear about what you think on that down in the comments below, and have maybe a discussion about it. Alright, so next let's go ahead and talk about the role that Bilbo has in the story. At this moment we're just talking about the Hobbit. He is basically, the role in the story that he has, it's a third person narrative, and we do talk about a lot of different characters. There's a big group, but Bilbo's kind of the main character. Really, he's the center of the operations, and he is what I would consider the chosen one. He is the main character and considered essential for the quest. He doesn't necessarily want to go on this quest at first, but he was chosen and selected to be what was needed for the quest. So he's dragged into it, and Gandalf is like, this is the one that's going to make it happen. That's what he basically tells the dwarves, is that this is their burglar, and that he's the only one that can do it. Even at the beginning of The Hobbit, he makes that dent on the door to mark that this is the person that we need. So Gandalf is the one that has chosen Bilbo. He does not choose it himself, though in the end you could say, if we took the unadventurous to adventurous debate and said that he did want to go on it and how he did choose to follow them, that it could be that he made the decision to go. But really, unless Gandalf came up and the dwarves came up and said, hey, we're doing this and we need you to be our burglar, that kind of thing, he would never have gone on this quest. He wasn't looking for adventure. He wasn't trying to find anybody who did adventuring. He wasn't trying to he wasn't involved in anything that dealt with going out and adventuring, or anything from the outside world, or anything that would even be like political in the Hobbit realm either. So he wasn't put in any position where this would come to his doorstep and he would willingly choose to take on this quest. The quest found him through Gandalf, and Gandalf is the one that chose him and decided, in whatever way Gandalf chose, or figured that he would be the one that was perfect for the job. Gandalf is the one that said, I'm choosing this Hobbit. This is the Hobbit that we need. And he had to go along with the ride. So instead of it falling up, it kind of fell upon him in the fact that he was chosen to be the hero or the person that's going to make it so they can succeed in the end. So that's his role in The Hobbit, is being the chosen one, the one that is going to, in the end, make it. The one who's going to make everything else possible. And then if you're thinking about it in the fact of what does he bring to the story. So his role in the story is to be the chosen one, the one that was chosen to make everything work. Now, what is his actual role? What does he do? What is it that moves the story along? And he is the person that makes the plot work. So you might question, like, okay, so he's the chosen one, but what makes him the person that needs to be followed? Why is the author picking this particular characteristics, this particular character that they've been made, and making them the chosen one? And that's basically what he brings to the story. So he is what makes the plot work. This sets him up to being the chosen one, so it's kind of hand in hand. But there are many, many characters, but only Bilbo can ultimately bring the story to where it needs to be. He is the only person that can get from point A to point B, which is the end of The Hobbit, and have it work the way it works out. Because of his character traits, because of the way he changes throughout the story, because of the characters that he's surrounded with, and the way they react to things, Bilbo is what makes it so they succeed. Even in the end, when the dwarves just want their mountain and the dragon's gone, and Bilbo has to step up to the plate and say, hey, that's not what we're fighting for here. Without that would not have ended the way things ended. There would have been war, there would have been trouble between the dwarves and the humans. So the only way that the story got to where it was supposed to be was through Bilbo. And that is the role, that is what he brings to the story, is the ability for the story to work. He is the essential key to everything in this story. The dwarves don't make what happens happen. They actually are, in the end, what makes the resolution work is not the fate of the dwarves. It's not Gandalf. It's not the humans that got involved. It's none of that other than Bilbo. Bilbo's the one that was able to sneak in and do what needed to be done and resolve things the way things worked out. I think there's too many things in that sentence, but that's all right, right? You still get what I mean? Let me know if you understand what I'm saying, especially with the difference between the role in the story and what he brings to the story. I know sometimes that can be kind of confusing when you're talking about a specific role, which is kind of like a classification, and actually what they do in the story. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about goals. Bilbo's goals for The Hobbit. There's two main ones. We've got that at first his goal is resisting the upset to his life. He is resisting the changes. He's resisting Gandalf and these dwarves. He's resisting it all. He's trying to just get rid of the dwarves and go back to his peaceful life. And you may seem like, well, that's at the beginning. There's a lot of time that he's actually with them. So how is that really a goal? But at first, that's all Bilbo wants. At first, Bilbo's just like, I do not want adventuring. I do not want to upset my life. I want to be the respectable hobbit that I am. I want to sit on my porch. And I don't want my life to become complicated. So that's the whole point of the beginning. So before he really goes on this adventure, that's what he thinks that he wants, and that is why it is a goal that I wanted to mention, because at first he's so resistant, and even though it's not the whole main portion of the story, that's still a goal that he has. Now, through the course of resisting, he has changed his mind and he ends up going on this adventure, and that's true that then his goal changes for whatever reason we want to say, whether it's because the dwarves convince him, if it's because Gandalf, if it's because he really wants to be an adventurer, if it's because, he just would feel guilty that they are at a disadvantage because they didn't have the last person in their party. Whatever it may be that changes his goal. His goal then becomes to complete this journey. The whole entire goal is to help his companions complete their adventure and their journey and to get to the end. That is what his goal becomes. Even though he gets the One Ring, even though he is the one that resolves the conflict and he goes on this grand adventure and becomes basically kind of a hero, that's not really his goal. His goal is just to follow his companions and do what needs to be done to complete the adventure that they wanted him to go on. Of course, there are many mini goals of the fact of like staying alive when they're in danger. But that's not really like a main goal that he has. So first, his main goal through the beginning of the story is to just not be involved. And then once he's involved, his mission is his goal is to finish and complete the journey, to be able to be somebody that works with the companions and can follow through with what he is being brought upon to do. And that's the main portion of Bilbo in The Hobbit. He goes through this really big character arc where he goes from the one set of traits to not a whole new set of traits, but where he becomes the opposite of what he was in many aspects. He becomes much more enlightened, he becomes much more knowledgeable about the world and how things work, and he completes his goal. He finishes his adventure to the end, and he is the thief that they needed and was able to steal from the dragon Smaug. So he actually is pretty satisfying kind of character arc here. We've got that he changes into being this hero, whether he expected to be or not. And he actually gets to complete his goal. He actually gets to make it to the end and does what he set out to do. Let me know if there's anything else that you think I should have talked about and analyzed for him for The Hobbit. Especially since The Hobbit is, like we said, him as the main character. But I feel like that's a really good essential look at who he is and what he does in The Hobbit. Even though he is a main character, we have a whole bunch of other characters that add and contribute to the story that makes it what it is. Of course, there is the whole portion of the ring and how that is setting up to have the Lord of the Rings and how it's going to come to Frodo because Bilbo has it. And he has the whole interaction between Gollum and himself. The whole part of the riddles, the whole sneaking away. Yes, this is all part of Bilbo's story, but I don't really feel like there's a lot of extra insights to who Bilbo is through it, other than obviously he likes riddles. But he doesn't really face off against Gollum in the end. He doesn't really do anything other than trick Gollum and run away with the ring and gets away. So I don't really feel like, though those might seem important parts, that really contributes to the character analysis. Please let me know if you think otherwise. I would love to hear your opinion and to see what you think shows different traits or different aspects that should be considered with Bilbo for The Hobbit. So like I said, with many other characters in the story, even though Bilbo is our main character and he is the one that makes everything work out in the end, he actually is pretty equally described, equally spent time on as like several of the dwarves and Gandalf and the adventures that they have and the people that they meet. Really, it's kind of just Bilbo riding a wave, just trying to survive and get through this adventure. So we do see his changes, but I don't really feel like he has lots of other roles in the story, or what he brings to the story is just mainly being the character that we follow and root for and completes us to the end. Again, please let me know if you feel any differently about how he is in The Hobbit. I would love to have a discussion with you and reanalyze Bilbo if you feel like I've done him a slight disjustice or anything like that for The Hobbit. And let's now go ahead and move on to his traits for the Lord of the Rings portion that he's in. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Lord of the Rings portion that he is in. And let's start with his traits. So, Bilbo is very adventurous at this point. He's actually wanting to go on an adventure all on his own. He doesn't even need a company with him, doesn't need Gandalf, doesn't need any other reason than he just would like to go on an adventure. And so we really see his change there. And it sounds like he hasn't been on an adventure since The Hobbit, so he's very, very much ready to get out there and see the world again. He's very resourceful. He's become very blunt. Not saying that he is saying things that are unnecessary, but he very sticks to the truth and be like, this is how things are. Obviously, he is hiding the truth of the ring from everybody, but when he comes out and says the way that he feels, he just goes and says it. Especially like when he's talking to Gandalf, talking about how he's feeling about himself and everything else, how he feels about the other Bagginses. He's just very much out there like, this is the way things are, this is how life has become for me. He's very confident, but he has become a little bit paranoid and a little bit selfish, and these two traits happen because of his connection to the ring. So he really wants to keep that ring, and it makes him a little selfish, and he's become more paranoid in believing that people are turning against him. Like when Gandalf says for him to leave the ring, he thinks that Gandalf is trying to steal it from him, even though he would normally know that Gandalf would never try to steal anything from the Hobbit ever, and that they are friends, and that would not be how he would mean it ever. So he's kind of changed over having had this ring in his possession, though it hasn't really corrupted him in a way. It's more just lasted him to have long life. There are certain moments where you can see that it's kind of warped his personality a little bit. He's become a little more paranoid and a little more selfish. Let me know if you think there's anything else that should be added for the traits for Lord of the Rings and the fact of the ring or not the ring, whatever else, if you think that there's more that has changed about him since The Hobbit. Now, what is the role of Hobbit in this story? He's not the main character. That's now been passed to Frodo. He's the one that's going to have to carry the ring and be the person that goes forward. Instead, the role in the story for this series is that he is the explorer or the wanderer. He is the person that has a much smaller part. Mostly, he's just off on his next adventure. He's mostly just wandering around. We see him with the elves again, but really that's all we see of him, is crossing paths with our new hero of Frodo. So he's just a wanderer, somebody who just wants to travel and see the world and is taking the world by stride. He is also, though, the catalyst. So that's the main thing that Bilbo contributes to Lord of the Rings, is that he is the person that starts the journey, or the main character on his journey. So him using the ring at his birthday party makes it so Gandalf knows about the ring, and that jump starts him having to leave the ring for Frodo and Gandalf finding what this is and knowing that it's not been destroyed and that the Black Riders, or ring wraiths, are going to be after this ring, which sets Frodo then moving forward for having to have his journey. So the setup with the Hobbit of him getting this ring then allows him to be the catalyst in Lord of the Rings, to have this journey, this adventure be thrust upon Frodo. He is the catalyst that starts the spark of the journey, that sparks the events that follow forward. So obviously, yes, we've got the Dark Lord, that's the Sauron. We've got Sauron, who is already looking for the ring. So eventually it's going to happen anyway, but Bilbo starts it sooner and makes it so that way the good side can get a jump on figuring out what they're going to do in destroying this ring and defeating evil before evil has a chance to come to their doorstep. Okay. Now, what does Bilbo bring to the story? So what in this story does he contribute? Obviously, yes, he's the catalyst and all that, but what does he actually do in the story that makes a difference? So he brings the ring to the next person. Like we said, that he's the catalyst. He's the one that allows Frodo to have the ring, and puts the beginning into motion. So that, again, it's kind of him being the catalyst. That's what he originally brings to the story at the very start. And then he provides Frodo in his journey with extra items that can help him. He gives him the mithril shirt, and he gives him Sting. Both are things that are very important, especially since the mithril does save his life against the troll. He gets stabbed and everyone thinks that he must be dead, but really the mithril protects him and he just gets the wind knocked out of him. And later, just in general, as he travels forward, any dangerous moments that he might have, that mithril is going to protect him. And with Sting, it gives him a weapon that is not only something he can fight with, but it also glows when there are orcs around, which comes in handy several times with Frodo. So he starts things into motion. He is the catalyst, as we talked about, and then later in the story he brings aid. He brings more things that that can help Frodo in his journey and help him bear his burdens. So really he's more of just a side character, somebody who starts our journey, somebody that passes the baton on and then provides aid, the aid that he can. So he's really only in the front portion of the story and really has mostly his role in the beginning of the story, but it's still important things that sets the rest of the story available to be able to happen, if that makes sense. Sorry if I'm kind of just rambling through that. It's kind of hard for me. I wrote my notes, but it's kind of hard for me to piece how to say it to you on this particular one, especially since the role in the story and what he brings to the story is so intertwined in this particular case. So let me know if I need to clarify anything, if you feel like I wasn't very clear, or if I was just going on too long, please let me know. Would love to have a discussion with you. Or if you think I'm missing something or wrong about something, you let me know that as well, as always. Whew. Okay, and then last but not least, we've got his goals for Lord of the Rings portion. And this one I find that he has two goals as well, as he did in The Hobbit. So the first goal, and his main goal, this is the goal that the whole time that we see him in Lord of the Rings, this has been his goal. And we find that he does end up completing it, or at least starting it, depending on when we decide what his finishing goal is. But his goal is to go on another adventure before he's too old to travel. Because of the ring, he's had an unnaturally long life. Not so unnatural that it's, like Gollum unnatural, but he is able to be around a lot longer than a normal hobbit would be. So he is ready to take another adventure before he knows he's going to have to retire. So that is his goal. And he does go and start his journey, and we do see him with the elves. We're not 100% sure. It could be that he goes on another adventure afterward or not. That we don't know if that was a pausing point. I know that he mentioned he wanted to find a place to finish the book he's writing, and to have a place to end his journey and retire. But we don't know for certain if he's going to decide that that's with the elves or not, per se. We just know that he has gone on his adventure and he's at least gone to the elves. So that's one goal. And then the other goal is to finish the book he was writing about his adventure. Obviously, he has made a very good start on it at the very beginning of The Lord of the Rings. He's mentions, starting it, right, working on it. But really, that's his other goal, is to be able to finish his story and write his book. So they're very simplistic goals. And his goals in the first, in The Hobbit, was more simple. It just got him a lot more trouble. But these are just very side character, very ordinary, everyday kind of goals that somebody might have, is to go on an adventure, to travel around the world a bit, see what there is to see, and to write a book. And that's something that even a you or me kind of person can have, and it does show that he is the explorer or the wanderer, and his goals are very much in relationship to that kind of character. And I feel like that's all I have to say on Bilbo. I feel like this is a little bit of a shorter character analysis. Sorry if that is the case, but I just feel like Bilbo's a very straightforward character with very simplistic... Sorry if you can hear my roommates right now. Simplistic person. Not meaning that he is not... It's not that he's not a complex character. Because he is. He does have depth to him. He does have emotions to him. We do really see him in a three-dimensional form. But he's a hobbit with simple wants and dreams and goals. So at first he doesn't want to go on an adventure, and then he does go on this adventure, and he finds that he enjoys it. But he's not somebody who's conniving. He's not somebody who's, searching for knowledge in himself. He's not somebody who's self-evaluating. He's not somebody who has done a whole bunch of adventures and, is manipulative or anything else. He's a very straightforward, honest character. So yes, he is complex, and he does have a lot to him that you find out about him. Hidden depths, as you could say. But really, his wants and his dreams in The Hobbit and in Lord of the Rings are very simple, straightforward ones. And his role in the story is very simple and straightforward to match his character. Really, this is the point, this is the role, and this is what he does, and this is what he attributes. So there's not really a lot of back and forth, there's not really a lot of craziness that happens with him. It's a nice arc for The Hobbit, and then he brings the beginning of Lord of the Rings. So yeah. That is what I feel about Bilbo. I hope I did okay, especially for the person who asked me to analyze him. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to discuss, any thoughts, concerns, questions, anything I wasn't clear about, anything you think I missed. I would love to have a discussion with you and everybody else about it, and hear your opinions and your likes and dislikes about Bilbo. Alright, I guess I will see you guys for the next class. Bye.